What's up, YouTube? We will be on in about 60 seconds. We're just going to let our notification bell spread the love. See you soon. So you want to learn how to rehab knee pain. Well, in this series this week, we are going to go deep on this topic. We've had a lot of requests come in for this, so we're really excited to get into it. Today we're talking about the ultimate rehab strategy. All that and more coming up right after this. We are the gym that teaches people how to move instead of just exercise, because we believe that health is about performance, not just body image. Okay, before we get started, in case we haven't met, my name is Yanni Baumeister. To my right here is Phil White, aka Dr. Phil, or at Phil White Physio. And myself, my brother and Richie brought you Unity Gym, and we are co-creators of the UMS system. And Phil is here to make sure that we do things correctly.
More than just bro science.
More than just bro science, that's right. No, we're pretty excited about this week's show, and we are going to dive pretty deep into this topic today. We're going to talk about the active and passive structures of the knee and why we feel that this rehab strategy that we're going to talk about this week is so important. So before we get started, Phil, how are you feeling?
Yep, very well. Had a good weekend of watching the sub 2 hour marathon. That was pretty, I was just glued
Pretty
to it.
epic, yeah.
It's unreal. I thought I'd just watch it a little bit while I did other things, but turns out you can just watch a guy run in a straight line for 2 hours. It was amazing.
when it's like such a perfect running style, you as you said this morning, it's like watching magic happen.
Yeah, it was poetry of movement. It was beautiful.
Yeah.
And then helped out at a national training squad event for the Australian Frisbee team. So always looking to plug Ultimate Frisbee where I can as a past fanatic. So
awesome.
Exciting to be involved as a physio there.
Yeah, awesome. Looks like Rad's doing some sick angles with the camera work here.
You're not meant to look at these angles.
Oh, yeah, sorry. We're not used to it. He's quite creative in comparison to Richie that just sits there and basically does nothing. Yeah. So in case you haven't noticed, Richie's not joining us today for the show. Rad is behind the box doing the editing and all that sort of thing. So any creative magic that occurs, it's on him. Richie has stink eye, literally. He's got something wrong with his eye. Anyway, should we get out on the gym floor and we'll show a couple of great exercise regressions, and then we'll come back in and talk about why we love them. Let's do it. So I'm going to be mic'd up today. Phil doesn't have a mic, so he's going to demonstrate the movements today. Yeah, so the first exercise we're going to do you want to grab some light dumbbells, maybe some 3s or 4s or something like that? Ones for Phil, Rad says. He's gone for the 5s, yeah. All right, so what we want to talk about here is the key to a really good rehab strategy for the knee is that we train all of the systems in the lower. And the reason why we wanted to do this series straight off the back of our hip stabilization series is because they work so well together. The knee, to be healthy and strong and stable, requires a really good, strong, healthy hip and also a really good, strong, healthy ankle. So we just sort of felt like it flowed really well this week from doing our hip stuff. So although the first exercise is very much targeting the knee and the quadriceps. We don't want you guys to feel like that's the be-all and end-all to rehab, because this is the key insight from today's show, is that to get really strong, healthy, stable knees, you need really strong, healthy, stable hip and really strong, healthy, stable ankle. And so we're going to be doing some hip exercises as well as some calf exercises in our knee rehab strategy. All right, so the first exercise, and this is the ultimate regression back. Now, the only thing, I'll get you to spin around and face forward, so do a side step up. We're going to do it this way, like this, feet parallel. This is actually quite a difficult way to do this exercise, guys, because we've got quite a high step here. So the way that you would regress back even further with this step up is to take the step lower to the floor. And there are many of you out there with knee pain or knee issues where you'll find that this will trigger the pain in the knee. So if that's the case, you can regress right back down closer to the floor. And you can go even lower than the step that we've got here if you use like a weight plate or something like that. And if you're rehabbing a knee after a reconstruction, then there's a very high probability that you will have to go lower to the floor. Now, Phil's got 5 kilo dumbbells. I'd probably say for most people starting at 3 kilos would be enough. And if you don't have access to dumbbells, don't let that stop you. We're going to be doing higher repetition stuff on this. The quads really like high rep stuff when in this rehab sort of format. What we're targeting here is all of the quadriceps, but specifically the oblique portion of the vastus medialis over here. So the key things that we're looking at, which we spoke about last week, is the hips staying nice and level and the knee tracking nicely over the foot. And the way we sort of cue our guys here is that we say, find that gap in the middle and big toe. Try and line the patella, the kneecap, straight up over that gap there in the big and middle toe, and that's where we want to stay. Now, the technique for the step up is that he's not allowed to push off his unloaded leg. So we're loading this leg up. We're going to pull the toes up and do what we call a plantar, a dorsiflex on the ankle over here. So now when he steps up, he can't use that foot. So we're minimizing that leg and maximizing the load going through this leg. Beautiful. And as a coach, when I'm watching this, I'm watching that his knees are tracking nicely and that his hips are nice and level. The moment I see the hip drop and he's looking for the floor, then I know that one, either the weight is too heavy, or two, the step is too high for him and his capability. Now we're lucky because we're doing this on the back of all of that hip stabilization stuff, and I know that Phil's got really nice strong glutes. I've seen him do a lot of the glute stuff last week, so he's going to do really well on this step up. But if the individual was really shaky and really wobbly on here, the first thing I would do is remove the weight and see how they go just with their body weight. And then if they were still really unsure of themselves and really wobbly and unstable, I'd slowly regress down to the floor. And if they were really bad still, then we would go back and continue on with our hip stabilization stuff and just make that the focal point right now, okay? So again, just to recap, we'll do a few reps. The tempo we do on here is 1 second up, 1 second down. And there's a reason for that. We want to minimize the amount that the glutes and hamstrings work to help out on here, so we don't slow the eccentric down. We just go up 1 second, down 1 second, and we try and maximize the load through the quad there. We do about 25 to 30 reps. Anywhere between the 20 and 30 rep range would be what I would program for here, because we really do want to break through and get into those slow twitch fibers in the quads. And you often will feel this in your ankle as well. It's a single leg exercise, so we don't have that stability. We're relying on the everters and inverters in the foot to be nice and strong, the perennials, all of those muscles to be nice and strong. Beautiful, mate. Very nice.
You can even make it less intense on the knee by taking a bit of a step back and using even more hip there. So
yep.
If I'm taking a step forward, it makes my knee bend even stronger.
Yep.
And so that makes it quite a lot more loading on the knee. So if you've got like a patella pain, anything around the front of the knee where bending your knee hurts more, then you can always take a step back and make it a bit even more through your hip. So
yep.
Driving up more through your hip, that's a way of
regressing it even more. Yeah, absolutely. Beautiful. Okay, the next exercise we're going to show is for the calves, and it's really easy. I'll just get you to pop those down. And we'll go over to the barbell here so you've got something to hold on to. And all we're going to do is a partial range calf drill here. So we're going to do 10 reps with the toes out, right up, standing up onto the balls of his feet, and he's got stability here. We're keeping the legs straight, so it's a straight leg calf raise. So we're going to do 10 reps with the toes out, then we're going to do 10 reps with the feet straight, and then we'll finish with 10 reps with the toes in a pigeon-toed position there. So we're just really hitting that gastroc from all different angles, and it's a really nice, easy way to load the calves up. Beautiful. Very nice. And then we're going to get a little bit fancy here, and we're going to do a seated calf raise. We want to try and hit the calves with a bent knee. So what I do is set up a step for Phil. Go and grab a, just grab a 15 kilo plate for now, mate. Normally I'd use a barbell on the legs, but the plate will be a little bit more comfortable. Hopefully it's not too awkward. And then what I'm going to get Phil to do is start in what we call a dorsiflex position. So he's pulling his toes towards his shins. And then I want him to go right up on his toes, lifting that weight plate. And the more he leans forward into the weight, the harder it'll be for his ankles. And for this one, I like to slow it down to about a 1 to 2 second eccentric tempo on the way down, and then 1 second back up. And you find like it gets a bit jittery on the way down. You're not really used to going into an eccentric movement on the soleus and the deeper muscles. So remember guys, the reason why we do a standing straight leg calf raise and then a bent knee calf raise is because the muscle systems in there, they operate under different conditions more. So you've got your soleus muscle here that's a little bit more active when you're doing a bent knee, which is really how we use the calves when we're squatting. And then the gastrocnemius is more active when the knee is a little bit straighter. Is that right?
Yeah, because the gastroc crosses both joints, the knee and the ankle. So when you've got it on, when your knee's bent like this, it relaxes it and means the soleus is used more because it only crosses the ankle joint. Now that's kind of seems a bit counterintuitive for the knee rehab side of things, so it doesn't cross the knee joint, because it's just so important to keep your whole leg conditioned when you're going through knee pain. So that's why we're doing both, not just the gastrocs. Yep,
that's right. Chuck that down, just leave it here. We'll tidy it up in a sec. And we'll head back into the room and talk about why we're training calves for a knee pain or knee injury. I'll get Phil back on a mic. So I think what I want you guys to take away from today's show is that although when we regress back, and it's super important to regress back, so let's say hypothetically you're experiencing knee pain when you're squatting or experiencing knee pain when you're running, it is important to sort of regress back and find exercises that you're going to be able to really strengthen the passive and active structures. And we'll talk a little bit about what's going on in the passive and active structures. But what we want you to take away from today's show is that it's not just the quads that are responsible for knee stability and knee strength and health. You've got the gastrocnemius, which actually crosses the knee and does help support the knee a little bit. And then you've got the hamstrings as well, which we're going to show you some exercises tomorrow on how to integrate hamstring strength into this.
Yeah, I think it's probably a good time now to go into a bit of the structure and function of the knee joint and talking about those active and passive structures and how it's important to look at the muscles that are directly crossing the knee joint, but also, just like Arnie said before, the ankle and the hip as well.
Yep.
Because when you look at the knee joint, it's a complicated hinge joint. So I guess an elbow is quite a simple one where it can't really move outside of back, just that sagittal plane, so back and forward. Whereas your knee joint, it does have a bit more sort of give, and that's to allow real change in movement when you're loading through your knee. But ideally, it's going to be lined up in a fairly straightforward sort of position. So that means that what's going on in the knee is going to be the result of what happens at the ankle, but also what happens at your hip.
Yep.
So that's why we've brought in these. It's more than just your knee. It's about your whole lower body system. And so when you look at the knee joint itself, you've got your femur, so your thigh bone going down and creating a plateau, and then you've got your tibia at the bottom as well. Now between that, you've got your meniscus, which is probably something that people have heard about. So that's a cartilage-like structure that takes a bit of the weight bearing and also provides nutrients to the joint. but it's a passive structure that just adds a little bit of extra sort of passive support to the joint. Then you've got your ligaments. So people get a bit confused between ligaments and tendons, I think, still. So ligaments are what attaches bone to bone. So with your ligaments in your knee, the ACL is the really well-known one and the end of many sporting careers.
Yep.
And so you got your ACL and your PCL. So they're just doing kind of a crisscross in your knee joint there to try and add a bit of support with the gliding motions in your knee. Then you've got your lateral and medial collateral ligaments. So they're just kind of going down either side, which can make sense if you don't want your knee kind of deviating too much off that sort of nice clean hinge joint that we were talking about before. So that's just the passive structures in the knee as well as your kneecap on top that provide that sort of stability and support for your knee. But just like we've talked about with every other joint, your passive structure is going to have to do a whole lot more work if your active structures aren't active. So your active structures being your muscles and your tendons. So muscles attach into bone via tendons. So just to clarify exactly what that tendon is. So all the muscles around your knee are really important at not only producing force through there, but also, just like in the other joints we talked about, stopping the glides. That's why your hamstrings, your quads, and your gastrocs, all these muscles that across the knee joint, they're going to be the ones that are not only producing force, but stopping too much of that glide. When you get lots of that glide, that's when you can start to run in issues with not only aggravation of your meniscus, but also tearing of your ACL, usually with like a single leg plus a kind of mechanical force that pushes it. But if you can have really good strength around those local muscles, then that's going to be very protective.
Yep, absolutely. And look, I've come back from a ACL tear and a MCL tear and meniscal tear as well. It all happened in one instance, playing soccer, and I certainly know what it's like to lose that I actually was opening the gym straight after it happened, or around the same time that it happened. So I opted to wait 3 months before I had my reconstruction, and I was walking around and again training without all of those sort of passive structures intact, you know. And it was funny, you know, when you've had an ACL rupture, one of the key indications is that you just lose balance every once in a while, like your knee just sort of gives out. And it was really, really interesting because that certainly happened a few times to me when I was standing around. And usually when I was like just doing something benign, like standing in the kitchen, and all of a sudden my knee would just give out.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's when you're not thinking about things, because when you have those active structures active, they do a really good job at supporting the knee, and that's why, as we've talked about before, with the players who are in the APL or in the American football still playing like competitive contact sports without an ACL, like they're able to manage it because their active structures are so good
strong
at supporting the joint. It's when you're not thinking about it, or if you haven't trained those active structures to be dynamically stabilizing, just like we've talked about in other joints. That's when you run into problems. So I think it's a nice time to bring in the other joints we're talking about with the knee health is your ankle and your hips. So you can imagine if you're standing on one leg and you're really wobbly, then all of that wobble is kind of going all the way up your body. And so if you're wobbling a lot, that means your knee is going to be wobbling a lot. And so you can sort of see there, if you were able to stabilize a bit better through your ankle, get that single leg balance a bit better, your strength around your ankle better, then you're going to have less of that wobble, which then means I guess less stability work for you need to do. At the same time, your hip with your single leg balance stuff like we were talking about last week, again, if you're able to keep your pelvis nice and level and you don't have, I guess, things going down the chain and the stability side of things, then your knee's going to have to do less work. So Absolutely. Look, guys, today we started a little bit late because we were planning the week of shows and series and we were a little bit behind schedule. So we're going to go a lot deeper and we'll have more time tomorrow to answer questions. But in the meantime, get your questions in. If you've tuned in now, smash the like up if you want to see more about knees and this topic excites you. And put some comments in the comment section and we'll go through that today. I actually had 3 pages of comments I wanted to talk about, but I didn't really realise the time when we got started today. And we're down, Richie, so we have to... Rad and Yanni weighed themselves and found out that Yanni's actually half kilo lighter than Rad at the moment. So there was some extra training and everything got a bit delayed. So
That's right. There was a few more bicep curls out there before we got started.
Brooking is fast, getting on the proteins.
That's exactly right.
You know, this thing when you're working with brothers, hey?
We're not competitive at all, but I have to win. We'll dive deep into this tomorrow. So get your comments and questions in today and this evening. I'll get them all printed out tomorrow, and we're going to bring in hamstring exercises tomorrow as well. And we're really going to go deep on this week. We want you to finish the week knowing full well what you should be doing to either avoid knee pain or rehab knee pain.
Yeah, and tell us about your past experiences, like the knee injuries that you've had and how they happen, because that can be a really good talking point for just how to avoid things and
absolutely.
help you in the future.
And remember to tell us where you're watching from. Anyway, until tomorrow, guys, if you do want to dive into, or at least dip your toe into the UMS and Unity sort of inner circle, download that free flexibility blueprint. If you want to dive headfirst in and start really charging forward, then jump on that free month trial of our UMS program. We'll be able to interact on a much closer level in our mastermind group. And until tomorrow, we'll see you then. Tomorrow. Health is about performance, not just body image.
You better be willing to accept what you're going to have to do to get there.
We'll start focusing on movement goals, strength goals, flexibility goals.
When you nail that skill, it's there forever.
The body image goal doesn't get you that
It's
far.
the consistency and frequency that's going to get you there. It's not the intensity.
There's no shortcuts to mastery and movement. Destination doesn't change overnight, but your direction will.
The gym is not the place to beat up the body that you hate. It's the place to build the body that you love.
We are the gym that teaches people how to move instead of just exercise, because we believe that health is about performance, not just body image.